right. Bismillah. Okay, so when we left off, we were going to uh, 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 embark on the history of Islam in prison and when the explosion took place, let's just say from the late 80s, mid to late 80s into the 90s and onward, right? We know that originally there was, few Muslims and primarily, brothers from the Wharf Dean community in particular, right? I believe that with the building and expansion of Islam in the cities, more masjids being built, ultimately more Muslims came to prison, and as far as the growth of Islam behind the wall, you would think that it was going down with, basically, I guess the prison chaplains or something, doing the outreach, right? What was your recollection, and who's responsible for the growth in the shahadas, and especially amongst the gang members and whatnot behind the wall?
Oh wow, that's. I would have to hope that my memory even serves me correctly, because the timing. Wow. I would have to go back to Old Folsom, 1988.
88.
Old Folsom, 1988. The Jamaat, the congregation was pretty large because obviously the population of Folsom is large. I would say at that time there was probably well over 100 Muslims, or give or take somewhere around that number, just going to Juma, just going to Juma Fridays. What's interesting is that at that time, they did hire their first. I remember when they hired their first Islamic chaplain. I believe that was John Fakir at the time.
John Fakir, I remember.
Yeah,
that.
and then Enrique Rashid was down there at Old Folsom at the time. He was one of the first also to be hired.
Daoud Salam.
Daoud Salam was one of the first also to be hired. At that time, you had within the Muslim community, you had Nation Islam, you had Five Percenters, you had Ansar Allahs, you had Ansar al Muhammad's, you had Moors, you had Wharf Dean community or Orthodox Muslims, you had Shia Muslims, you had there was even, believe it or not, there was a couple brothers who practiced Sufi Islam at that time. I remember Brother Mikael was a Sufi Muslim.
Ahmadiyas.
You of course you had Ahmadiyas as well. Yes, you had brothers actually from the nation that was continuing to study down the Ahmadiyya
path. Because that's obviously a history that's intertwined that most people don't even really like to acknowledge, but primarily that is their link historically to the study of Islam or the approach of Islam in general. I remember that they always would refer to the which translation is that? The Yusuf, not the Yusuf, is the Yusuf Ali translation. The other translation,
the Maulana translation.
The Maulana,
yes.
Yeah.
That was the Quran they was reading.
That's the Quran that they read.
Yes, and then the basic Yusuf Ali translation in English that a lot, and then brothers was reading Pickthall translations, and it was in those times Islam, and primarily just because coming from an Islamic upbringing, I was able to observe the different views and the different beliefs that they had, that brothers were sharing with each other or brothers was staking claim to. There was a lot of uneducated Muslims in prison at the time. they just began their endeavors towards educating themselves. Primarily, like I said, is because there wasn't a lot of literature available. So there weren't books that you can just order and, go to. There was a publication outfit out of Chicago, Illinois that was large, and that's where a lot of the brothers would order their first Islamic materials that was translated into English. Brothers was reading hadith, different hadiths that were translated into English, that were made available, and studying the hadith with the ayats of the Quran without any understanding of Aqidah, or without any understanding of fiqh, or without any understanding of, just the history in general of Islam. Then it was more of a loose type of affiliation rather than in-depth affiliation. We had brothers, very reputable brothers that were Muslims at that time in 1988, years prior to that, and obviously after.
Before I get into the reputables and their names, I wanted to ask, with all the various factions under one roof, so to speak, were there a lot of incidents of skirmishes or?
There was a lot of debates that turned into heated debates. There was a lot of wild, gang mentality or wild street mentality mixed into the discipline of trying to be a Muslim at the time, or studying Islam at the time, or just changing your ways, so to speak, at the time. There was a lot of mixture.
So it's like a maturing process.
There was a maturation process that had to take place. Some people even, I don't want to jump ahead of myself, but there was a time when Crips from Los Angeles would embrace one side of Islam, and Bloods from Los Angeles would gravitate towards another ideology of Islam. And I remember that vividly, when it started, about when it started, and how that blossomed into something else. So that's where skirmishes.
Okay. Yeah, we want to unpack that. But we were going to mention some of the reputable names who became Muslim from these particular neighborhoods of Los Angeles.
The brothers that either took their shahada or was responsible for giving dawah throughout the system. Wow. Brothers that were, I can tell you about brothers that I was close with.
Right.
Or brothers that not only did I study with, but congregated with.
Right.
Well, you can say Big Insane.
Big Insane.
Playboy Gangsters. Okay, at that time, his name was Jelani.
Big Jelani.
Big Jelani was, he was serious about studying his Islam at that time.
He has a serious history as a gang member, so
yes.
Would you say that energy was transferred
absolutely.
to his deen?
Absolutely. Jelani for sure. Salahuddin,
okay. Go ahead.
Tombstone, Salahuddin.
From the jungle.
Yes, was very serious, very active.
What do you, in light of the recent statements that we know about with this OG Gumby from Hoover or whatever, who made the foolish statement and utterance that, becoming a Muslim behind the wall, or, become the Muslim and to stop gang banging is, in his opinion, a PC move, which we can get into unpacking PC, at a later date, and we can apply it to his demonstration, right? But would you say that people felt that way about Jelani, or?
Absolutely not. That would be far fetched. Jelani had a general's aura. He had a general's respect, both from being a Playboy Gangster Crip as well as being a Muslim. They never looked at him sideways or would even consider that. Well, I would have to say that at that time, that wasn't even something that was on people's tongues. That I've never heard that. Never heard anything about a Crip or a Blood becoming a Muslim somehow. He didn't have any more affiliation or association with his tribe that he came from. That's a myth, because everybody kept strong ties with their tribes, even after taking Shahada. And I can only tell you about my times and the prisons I've been to. Some of the stuff that you might be referring to might have took place on a lower level yard, less structure. Maybe you did have gang members that couldn't program with whatever orders came down from the gang, so they decided to opt out of the gang, and maybe you would find them in church or going to Juma or interested in Islam. But you might be talking about not even less than 1% of the Muslim population as a whole that you're even referring to.
Right. Right.
So that's far beyond my understanding.
So that brings something to mind. Let's just say, Muslims, Muslims operate from a whole different perspective in relations to, like, let's just say, the gang mentality or the gang politics and their rules and regulations that they enforce, right? That doesn't apply to Muslims. And so, as you said, there might be an individual who's trying to get out of that and he wants to, take another path, and say he slides and becomes a Muslim, right? That doesn't equate him to a PC. But let's just say his homies felt a certain type of way. What would be the protocol of the Muslim? I would say this before you answer it. I would say this. My advice to a gang member who was going through that particular stage of growth would be to go to your homies and tell them what you're going to do.
Correct.
First and foremost, because if you don't, it can create conflict. And then second to that is, as Muslims, we have a protocol where we have to check and balance things too. We have a vetting process. You don't just come to the Muslim and say, I want to be a Muslim, and when you was a gang member yesterday, and nobody's going to question that as if, this is you can just change your spots type of thing, and no one's going to question your motive or your past or maybe what you might be running from.
That is correct.
Okay.
That is correct. I can say that for myself and others that would be correct. There was a vetting process. I can probably openly say that out of the hundreds and hundreds of shahadas that I've personally given to gang members, I don't recall any of them running from anything. Not the ones that I was personally involved with. So I don't know where that concept, like I said, it could possibly come from a lower level yard where things are a lot less structured, and take into consideration that we're discussing timelines, we're discussing eras, if you would.
Right.
I can tell you that in certain eras, what happens today in the Department of Corrections amongst the Muslims as well as amongst the gang members who have become Muslims, etc. What's taking place today could not have possibly taken place in the 80s or even the early 90s. It could not have. So we're talking about a different era, a different time, different mentality, different options. There's things that are even with the gang culture in prison itself, it's such a loosely netted program today that even the gang members could not have gotten away with what they get away with today. They couldn't have got away with that in those times. So I probably wouldn't even mix the timelines of suggestions, because you can do today what you couldn't do yesterday.
Right.
So it was a
Things
different time.
evolve.
Yeah.
Things evolve. Yeah. So you mentioned Jaylani. You mentioned Salahuddin. You know, these being two known gang members who were Muslim.
Known in their community, known in
in
prison, and known in Islam. You mentioned briefly about were there like skirmishes, or or were there such
Yes.
tension in the ranks,
Yes.
being that you had so many different schools of thoughts and practices. Well, I can tell you, there were Jamaats, brotherhoods that were just beginning to formulate in the 80s. And these Jamaats, these different brotherhoods, these different communities had names, or names ascribed to them.
Okay.
Sometimes even the Muslims, who were a little bit more Christian-like,
Okay.
were there more for the spiritual aspect of Islam. A lot of them would even accuse us and the different brotherhoods and Jamaats of being Muslim gangsters, or you guys are just Muslims acting like thugs or gang members, or not much has changed in your guys' walk or talk or behavior or ways, or so that ultimately, led up to conflicts and run-ins, and but you have to be fair and you have to be honest about the time. And the time was a very premature time of Islam throughout the Department of Corrections.
Right.
It was its very first stages.
Right. In its evolution.
In its evolution.
And the maturation in brothers' understanding of Islam more thoroughly.
Absolutely.
Given a more brevet, more of a broad view, instead of just let's just say the mujahid aspect of Islam,
Yes.
which is something that a lot of gang members
gravitate
to, because coming from a soldier-like background, you see that and you identify yourself, so to speak.
Yes, hence the 79 revolution of Iran, which is the Islamic Revolution. It's a gravitational pull.
Right.
More interested in that aspect of Islam. Yes, they had brothers who that was the invite. There were brothers who were responsible. I had a brother from Oakland named Saeed Mutakabir, and this brother had a very, very strong reputation in prison for giving dawah. And his dawah was essentially telling you a little bit about Islam and handing you a Muslim journal and telling you take it back to your cell and read that and tell me what you think about it, and got any questions, I'm here to answer them, and you can exchange that one for another newspaper, etc. And this particular brother that I'm speaking about was from the War of Deen Muhammad community. His entire family grew up in the Nation of Islam. But they already had a reputation. The family had a reputation in the streets of Oakland before he even came to prison.
Okay.
So they were involved in street activities in the Bay Area that gave them a large name, reputation on the streets. And then they were also involved in a large family. They belonged to a large family that were Muslims, so they were known as Muslims also in the streets. So brothers like Saeed Mutakabir, he would give dawah. These other brothers that I'm talking about that are strong, reputable brothers from their neighborhoods and their sections, those brothers would start giving dawah to their homeboys, or the younger brothers that would just arrive to prison young age, 18, 19, 20 years old. They don't know much about what it is they want to do, or what they're obligated to do, or what they should do when they reach prison, because a lot of times the prison stories, by the time you get to prisons, it's a different story. It's a different reality. So what you were told was going to happen, and by the time you get there, it's a different reality. So I've seen a lot of that. So there were younger brothers, and those were more of the mischief brothers that I used to hang around with, or they used to hang around with me. We were more of the mischievous Muslims that still had their hand in the cookie jar.
Okay. So ultimately, there was a maturation process, and during that maturation process, who were or what were some of the changes that were ultimately come about in your own behaviors, as well as the relationships with the other communities
Throughout the maturation process. A lot of brothers who ended up in the SHU, confined to where their study became more isolated, became more heightened,
more intense.
We have Muslims that have been in and out of the SHU programs, spreading Islam also in the SHU and at SEG, and you're able to get a little bit more material now, less distraction, more isolation. I've watched brothers become very knowledgeable in Islam, coming from those isolated circumstances, and then eventually coming back out to the yards. Islam is now, at this time, I would say, when the mass incarceration began to become a political ticket in California, and the mass building of prisons in California, as fast as they built the prisons, that's how fast gang members
Would fill them up.
and that's how fast Islam would spread at just about at the same speed. So if you can imagine, when there were 12 prisons in the state of California versus 30 prisons in the state of California, of course, not only were there gang members in all the prisons, there were also Muslims in each one of those prisons. So there's an exponential growth, I would call it, rather than a gradual maturation. I would say the beginning of 1990 forward was an exponential growth of Islam.
I can recall that you said like 98, I mean not 98, 88, when you say like the expansion of the prison complex, right? I was in Tracy in 88, and they were just building Corcoran.
Correct.
I believe. And from the time of them building Corcoran to the time when I came back to prison, which was 94, 95,
Okay.
there were so many new prisons that, I mean, what was it, like the Mule Creek and Ironwood and Ione and Green Valley and the Pleasant Valley, and that then they opened up High Desert, and it's just so many new prisons. It was ridiculous, you know what I'm saying? Just in a couple of years. So let's just say let's say 88 to 94. Let's say 6 years, right? As much as they built new prisons to house a population of, let's say, 5,000 people or so on a prison yard, on a prison complex, depending on how many yards it is, right? The growth of Islam was just as rapid.
It was just as rapid. Yes.
Prison growth.
Exponential. There was exponential growth. One of the downfalls, if there was, in the exponential growth of Islam was there was a lot of Muslims who became Muslims under particular ideology, school of thoughts, or different jamaats that other brothers in other penitentiaries had no idea even existed. So, for instance, a lot of the activity that was happening in the lower level yards, a lot of the people in the maximum level yards, they didn't even have the same programming of Islam. They didn't program the same. A lot of the discipline was different. So a lot of people were able to embrace Islam and come into the fold of Islam. And I'm talking about specifically, I'm talking about gang members. A lot of them were able to do it under the tutelage of people who themselves have not been taught correctly or properly. So there was a lot of looseness that a lot of the maximum security prisons, they just didn't know even existed unless somebody pulled up on the yard and said, I came from such and such prison and this is how we do this and this is how we do that. And so there was a lot of that. And then there was a lot of romanticizing of the revolutionary aspect of Islam, where a lot of the riders that were considered G riders and things of that nature from the sets of the gangs thought that they had to bring the exact same energy into Islam. So that's where a lot of the, why does it look like a gang? The media, why are the
The
Muslims
posture
doing
of
that?
the Muslims and
The
everything.
posturing,
Right,
the
right.
this, the that.
I could require it would kill your flow, but it just made me laugh about the time when we were on the yard when the brother Timmy Tucker came to the yard, and known reputable 8-tray gangster and all that, right? And I remember his spiel about, yeah, I'm coming to Islam and I'm telling you, all you dudes that's out here that's soft with it. He was talking all this stuff, and I remember me laughing at that. I literally was laughing, and I'm like, this brother think that he finna come to Islam and be Timmy Tucker.
Correct.
You got that all the way twisted.
Correct. Yes, correct. Not to mention.
Not to be, and I don't mean it disrespectfully,
No,
but the line that you're pushing, that's not the line you're finna push in the deen.
Yeah.
Not on the Muslims.
Not on the Muslims or otherwise. I recall that.
I remember V-Dog from Raymond. I'm coming to Islam. I pulled up on V-Dog.
I remember when he said that.
Yeah. You never came, V-Dog.
I remember.
Still waiting on you, V-Dog.
Correct. I remember. I remember. It's a romanticized glorification of, you think if I'm respected in one aspect of a lifestyle, that it automatically converts over to another aspect.
Right.
What a lot of people have a misconception of, and I want to keep it within the timeline so that I didn't have to, speak on brothers who are Muslims taking their Shahada maybe in the year 2000,
Right.
or maybe in the year 2010, or
Right.
I don't want to jump that far ahead, but in the earlier times of the evolution of Islam in prison, I can say this, and I can put my name on it. The Muslims were the last group of people that anybody wanted to mess with in the prison systems. It's not because the Muslims' chests are bigger. It's not because they postulated on the yards greater than you. It's because the same killers that you had respect for in your neighborhood are not Muslim. And everybody knew that. There was no secret to that. Even to the extent, believe it or not, different races.
Indeed.
Even to the extent of different races. I remember a South Sider taking his Shahada.
Samir,
Northaniel.
Nathaniel.
But I remember when you couldn't. This is when you could not be associated with the Muslims. And I remember this Southsider, the first thing they did is he said, hand me a knife. He took a shahada, he left Juma with a knife. And it's not because he had any animosity towards anybody, it's because he knew that his people would tell him he could not associate with the Muslims.
Right.
So he wanted to take his Islam to the shoe with him.
Right. I recall, and then we'll wrap it up because I know we pressed for time. My experience when you remember when I got close to paroling and my points kept dropping or my points dropped. I did everything I can to get
stay there.
I was trying to get 115s, and you know what I'm saying. They the COs would laugh at me, wouldn't write me up. I'm walking through the day room, smoking, standing out of bounds. You know, I ain't listening. They wasn't going for it. Anyway, I dropped down. I go to the C Yard, Corcoran, and I was programming. And my program, I took my same level 4 program over there, even though they had me in the gym. I was like, I wasn't digging it. I made sure my presence was known and felt in that little small space. You know what I'm saying? I made my salat. You know what I'm saying? I only called it down one time. Made it, let it be known, right? But once I did that, everybody gave me my space.
Correct.
And what I noticed was, it was a young Sereno who was watching my program. He see me go in the yard, bust down, come back in, shower, get on my bed, sit down with my kitab, and I'll be right there on the bed, everybody running around, you know, doing what they do, and I was building, right? And he started coming over and asking questions about the dean. And he said, you know, I see you be doing this, doing that, you know, what's up with this and that, and he wanted to ask these questions. And the south side of shot caller in the dorm, in the gym, you know, he used to watch me. And I noticed him watching me. And after about a couple of weeks, he came and told me, he said, yeah, Holmes, I watched your program. He said, and I know you ain't active, you know what I'm saying, like on the gang tip, right? And I said, no, man, I've been Muslim for a few years now, you know what I'm saying? And he was like, well, that's cool, Holmes, because one of my homeboys, you know, he wants to learn from you. And I told him it's okay.
Very rare.
I was like, wow, bro. I mean, I didn't tell him that, but that's
rare.
a rare occasion,
Rare.
and it's only because of the nobility and the respect of Islam and the Muslims that something like that would, or a door like that would be even opened, and it wasn't considered no PC move.
I've never heard of PC moves.
Yeah.
Me myself personally, PC moves is beyond that. That's beyond my understanding right now. Did you have Muslims PC? Yeah. I mean, everybody PCs up, but not PC and then come to Islam on the same yard in the same time. But not the yards I've been on. That's all I can say. None of the prisons that I've been to at the times I was at those prisons, I've never seen something like that. I've seen Muslims get PC'd up by the Muslims.
By the Muslims, right. Like individuals who still straddling the fence.
Or did something just totally
something that was
to the extent, offensive to the extent where you're gonna get all the Muslims involved. So Muslims would attack Muslims and PC them up, but not from the outside, the other way around.
Well, before we wrap up this session, you know, this build session, you know what I mean, on Muslims behind the wall, anything you want to wrap up with?
Yeah, there's multiple views on one book. There's never one view on one book.
Right.
Maybe you weren't there, so maybe you shouldn't speak on something that you were not engaged in or involved in. Maybe you heard something from somebody, but you yourself, you got second and third hand knowledge of that situation.
Or you're just working with feelings that are unfounded.
Well, that's kind of Yeah, that's kind of unnecessary.
SubhanAllah.
Especially now, we're grown men. That's totally unnecessary to be this old working with feelings about things of that nature. But I will say that as more brothers come out and as more brothers speak, and inshallah we'll try to facilitate that. But as more brothers speak and more brothers come out, you'll understand that a lot of the stories that you've heard about, a lot of the horror stories or the just historical accounts, were quite inaccurate. They're not true. They're not true. If you were there, you know what the truth is. You know how Muslims function. You know how Muslims functioned with other gang members. You know how Muslims functioned with other organizations. I can tell you that me personally, you know, I was around brothers who have taken their shahadas at the highest heights, from the people that they respected the most all the way up to generals in their organization. And I am specifically talking about Crips, Bloods, Southsiders, North Daniels, and White Boys, or the Woodpile. Yes, there have been people who are from the Woodpile that have taken their shahadas. North Daniels taken their shahadas. Sureños taken their shahadas. Obviously Crips and Bloods, obviously Kumis, obviously BGFs. These things did exist. What you see today is probably not a good reflection on history any more than any other account, whether it's Muslims or whether it's gangbanging.
Okay. Well, alhamdulillah, Rabbil Alameen, Habib. I appreciate you swinging through and chopping it up with me. We'll have to get back together.
Inshallah, there's a lot more to discuss and talk about. I don't even think I did an intro.
Man, we didn't do an
I
intro.
don't even think it's an
we
introduction.
just kind of wanted to get a little something done today. You know what I'm saying?
Alhamdulillah.
And we'll open up the platform
Absolutely.
to go more in detail. You know what I'm saying? And provide some information for the viewers, inshallah, that they aren't aware of. I'm quite sure. So with that, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Mustafa Bey signing out.
Jamal Ibn Nasr signing out.
Alhamdulillah, Rabbil Alameen.
Alhamdulillah.
Yeah, all right.